This is a clouds weather alert.
Meteorologist Casey Cloud coming on the air right now. We had a severe thunderstorm warning that was briefly in effect there for parts of Marion County here in our southern areas, but it looks like it went away very quickly. I mean, we were just jumping on here pretty rapidly for that, and also to talk about a major concern involving a tsunami situation in the Pacific. Of course, our priority is North Florida and South Georgia here in terms of severe weather and the like. I'll see our coverage map. But this is not a tsunami threat whatsoever toward our local area. That is good news. So let me just lead off with that as we look at this storm action here in our southern fringes. But between the local warning and the global threat here, we wanted to jump in. Just too much going on for me to try to just send out and tweet us getting something ready about an update on the tsunami situation that's becoming more concerning out, toward the Pacific there. 8.7 earthquake, now 7.8, which is what initially was indicated. This could be one of the bigger earthquakes we've seen, just overall on the list in a long time. It could trigger a big tsunami in the Pacific again. Not a threat locally here, but in the Pacific, that could be a much different story. But as we look here toward our local area, we're keeping the logo red for the tsunami threat. The heat threat's starting to subside some. We wouldn't keep it red otherwise, but as we look here, you see the wind threat here with the storm accent popping up where we've had all this heat here in our region today. That seems to be weakening. There's still a warning just south of the area for a severe thunderstorm situation and a flash flood warning just a little bit further south than that. Those both in Lake County here. Again, those don't at this point, seem, that big of a deal. That severe warning in our area seemed like it was starting to pulse up there. We thought with this everything going on, you see how it had that yellow box pop up that thought we should just jump in. It got issued at 8:29. It was dropped at 8:41. So that was a very short-lived warning as we go to the current rate of review. Still a lot of lightning there toward parts of Marion County. Still quite a bit of lightning in Putnam County. These are not the priority, though, quite honestly, especially they're not being a warning in play any longer. So we're not going to spend too much more time on this here. You see St. Augustine. As we're looking, you see a little bit of wind action there. Had some gusty winds around Keystone there. As we're looking at things in that part of our area, had some rain over an inch here east of Stark. We got over 100, 101 today. But then we had that rain, and that cooled us down here. We're 75 degrees now, so that's a big temperature departure as we're looking at things and as we're tracking them here in toward the weather center. In fact, let me go ahead and zoom up a little bit toward the north and west here. We're going to switch radars for a moment. And you see we did have, something a little bit stronger north-southwest Georgia. That seems to be weakening here at this point in time, so that is good news as we look at things, as we track them, as we go back toward our local view. You can see here the lightning parts of Marion County. Again, there's quite a bit of it. If you see that lightning in the distance, that's where a lot of it's coming from. If you're looking from Bradford, southeast now, and really southeast. And if you're looking due east, you see the lightning over St. Johns County a little bit more. Now we have a camera looking west. I'll pull it up right at sunset here, and we'll just kind of pull that view on in real quick. And that's a pretty nice view here of the weather situation right now here east of Stark. Unfortunately, a much, much different story in the Pacific. There is mounting concern here. So we're going to move away from our local weather now. We've covered that for the last few minutes here. But there is mounting concern. There's a lot going on there in terms of an earthquake situation. So give me just a moment here. I'm going to, put up a different source because we have just so much going on. I can't just summarize it in a few phrases here. So what we're going to do, we're going to share the screen here of some of the different important websites here that we use in all of this here as we're tracking things. So just trying to get everything kind of aligned as the situation evolves. So, because we did have to talk about that local warning here for just a moment. But now it's about the global threat here with the tsunami scenario. So here we go. The USGS information here, an 8.7 earthquake reported at about 7:24 Eastern, which is 4:24 Pacific time, a little bit earlier out there in like Hawaii time and the like. But it's that blue dot. There's been other earthquakes as well, and there is actually a tsunami warning for some of Alaska here now. That was an advisory. It got upgraded with a tsunami watch for Hawaii as the last check, and I'll go to the current graphic on this in a moment. We have a tsunami watch for the west coast of the U.S. now. We also have a tsunami watch for at least parts of Guam. They might have expanded it to even more of Guam here. There was just part of that area under that, but it's a very fluid weather situation, fluid, scenario here meteorologically and just in terms of the breaking news. So, this could be a big deal. We've had big tsunamis in the world here that were big headliners back in '04 and 2011. So, you see the time frame there. As we keep looking, we keep tracking. This is a very fluid situation. We're having to do some of this on the fly here. Again, locally, this is not a threat. We still have some of those storms around, though, and we'll continue to keep an eye on those for sure. For sure. But I'm going to go ahead and switch over to our tsunami map here that we can get from tsunami.gov here. This is a very serious scenario, potentially, not a guarantee. But potentially, we just have so much going on here, and depending on what happens, we may end up wrapping this update up in a little bit and then coming back. Again, this is not for local. The severe weather threat has been for local. The heat's been for local, but the tsunami threat is out in the Pacific. So here you go on our other source, tsunami warning. We had this earthquake hit off of Russia here, folks. Off of Russia. So there you go. It was 8.7. As you're looking at things, as you're tracking things, and you see in red here, as we go ahead and kind of try to zoom on in just a little bit here. We're going to go ahead and keep zooming on in here. This situation very fluid. There's a tsunami warning there as we're looking for a small part of Alaska. That is in that red color here. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things. That's where you got to be seeking higher ground and or evacuating, depending on what the procedures are that are in play. Now, that's an area that has that threat generally a little bit more often. But as we look here further off toward the east, I know there's an advisory here in the orange. Not as bad, but still some impact. You see the red does extend further up with the warning. Now, the yellow, that's a watch, a tsunami watch for more of Alaska. This gets all the way down the west coast of Canada here as well. And then we ultimately get toward the U.S. here, obviously, the U.S. West Coast, under a tsunami watch here, folks. We're watching for this threat. There's that potential for danger to escalate. There's that potential for that danger to escalate here along the west coast of the U.S. Not a certainty, but it's time to, if there's not, local water is issued, which some places might go ahead and do it. It's time to be ready. You're prepared to evacuate here. In all these west coast zones, prepare to seek higher ground if maybe you're in an area where evacuation isn't practical, but there's more time than some of these earthquakes you can get here right off the coast that trigger a tsunami. There's not enough time. In this situation, you're under a watch, not a warning. So there's time to, in most cases, I would say, unless you're like way up on a mountain range or something, otherwise there's really probably time to evacuate here or make those plans to evacuate. Then we have a tsunami watch for parts. Oh, did they upgrade this? They might have. Let's see here. I see that in red now. Okay, let me go ahead. We're getting this information. It's very fluid here. Let me see if I've upgraded that to a warning now for Hawaii. I'm not sure. This is a very fluid situation. We're live on the air, so there's a lot happening here. I gotta go ahead and read through some stuff. I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. It's like changing back and forth on some of my maps, so this stuff's not easy to discern here, especially when we're live on the air like this. I want to make sure I'm getting this right here. Okay, now a tsunami warning for Hawaii that has been upgraded. I have confirmed that. Okay, let's see the statement here. They sent out trying to make it kind of bigger on our other source, and I'm going to switch this map over in a second too, so I'm not confusing anybody. This is not a local story, except that we had a severe warning from Marion that was short-lived. weather, in terms of the lightning, the rain, not a destructive wave by any level there. So, okay, here's the statement. This is a tsunami warning here. They issued about 10 minutes ago then for the state of Hawaii at 2:43 Hawaii time. And the earthquake at 1:25 Hawaii time off of Russia. They're 8.7, the moment magnitude. A tsunami has been generated that could cause damage along all coastlines there, as we're looking toward each of the different islands. I know we're not that far off of the anniversary of those terrible wildfires. There's a hurricane south of Hawaii, big hurricane right now, out there in the Pacific. But that's not necessarily going to have, the exact, type of implications of the wind, probably as the one with Dora going back in the Pacific, with that gradient there and the like. But it's a situation here where we really gotta be mindful. We really gotta be cognizant of a big meteorological impact. I know it'll be interesting to see how a hurricane. I mean, we don't want it to happen like this, but not exactly sure how a hurricane would impact the tsunami waves further south of Hawaii. But let me go ahead. We're going to switch off of this for a moment. There's a lot going on, a lot to get to with this, especially now that we have a tsunami warning for Hawaii. It's time to evacuate. If you're in those tsunami-prone zones in Hawaii here, folks, this is very serious stuff. And we need to go ahead and keep on looking at things, keep on tracking things here. I'm trying to get some different information set up. It's a very fluid scenario here, obviously. A very fluid situation. Let me just switch over to a map here with a satellite of the Pacific Basin. Okay, we're going to do that. So we're going to move off of our local map. We have some strong storms, be careful. But we are going out to the Pacific and then Hawaii. Let's zoom on into Hawaii here. The tsunami scenario generated further north. You have the infrared satellite on. Down to the south, we have the hurricane situation. As we're looking down there. But let's go ahead and zoom into Hawaii. These areas here could get hit by a tsunami. Yes, really. I mean, it sounds like something that, we don't have to talk about much. It almost sounds wrong to have to say it, but that's how fluid these situations and how rapidly they can evolve. I'm making things a little bit bigger. My other source here, so let me go ahead. We'll take this full. Okay, so there's tsunami warning now for Hawaii. 8.7 moment magnitude here. A tsunami has been generated that could cause damage along coastlines of all islands in the state of Hawaii. Urgent action should be taken to protect lives and property. A tsunami is a series of long ocean waves. Each individual wave crest can last 5 to 15 minutes or more and extensively flood coastal areas. The danger can continue for many hours after the initial wave as subsequent waves arrive. Tsunami wave heights cannot be predicted and the first wave may not be the largest. Tsunami waves efficiently wrap around islands. All shores are at risk no matter which direction they face. The trough of a tsunami wave may temporarily expose the seafloor, but the area will quickly flood again. You see something, maybe the water looks like it's not as high. That could be, false hope and maybe even a warning sign that a tsunami is coming. Extremely strong and unusual near-shore occurrence can accompany a tsunami. Debris picked up and carried by a tsunami amplifies destructive power. Simultaneous high tides or high surf can significantly increase the tsunami hazard. The estimated arrival time in Hawaii, this is very important information, of the first tsunami wave is 7:17 p.m. Hawaii time. So you got some time to evacuate there. It's not coming on you right this minute by any stretch there in Hawaii, at least. Alaska, different story. That area, that smaller, less populated area under the warning up there. But these are very highly populated areas under a tsunami warning here. This is 2:43 Hawaii time. It is now, let's see here, 2:57 Hawaii time. So you have about 4 hours. Don't wait because the traffic jams will be building quickly. But you have about 4 hours before the first tsunami waves going to arrive there. It would seem in toward Hawaii, but we have a tsunami warning here. 4 areas in Hawaii. This is very serious, folks. It's time to go and take action. You want to try to beat the gridlock here. Excuse me, on the roads there in Hawaii. Again, there's a tsunami warning now for areas in Hawaii. This is very serious stuff. You got to take action in toward that area. I'm going to divert some resources in our system here over to some of our Hawaii maps on our other source as well. If we get a local warning, we'll go back to it. But this is something we really got to focus on in Hawaii right now. Again, there's a tsunami warning in effect now. So again, we had a tsunami watch going back a couple weeks ago in the night. It didn't materialize. This may end up being a situation that materializes, especially with an 8.7, earthquake further up there toward the north. I'm just checking my information here behind the scenes. Just trying to get everything set on up. So again, this is a very dangerous scenario. Very fluid situation. Just a one-man being here, but trying to update things best we can. Okay, so we have the other map on the other source now. So this is the Big Island. I know there are some mountain areas here, so they're not under the tsunami warning. But, if you're in the pinkest color, that's where, you're advised here to take action and move to higher ground. That's on the Big Island now. There's more populated areas. This is Maui here. This is areas further to the north now. In Honolulu County, you don't have quite as many areas under it there, but Honolulu is. So that's a problem, obviously. And then as you get here toward Kauai here, you have a lot of areas under the tsunami warning as well in the pinkest zone. Tsunami warning in effect here as we look at this situation, as we give you guys the very latest on this very serious situation. So we're getting updates in. We need to talk about the west coast of the U.S. here because there's a tsunami watch in play. We have this stuff coming at us from all different directions because it's different parts of the basin. Let me take Guam here too because there was concern about them. So let me go ahead and check Guam because I know they had a watch there issued before a lot of folks. Let me go ahead and see what we have out toward Guam as well. Let me go ahead and click on some information here. This stuff that's, not used often, so I've gotten more familiar with it recently looking at stuff, but it's not a situation here where, sometimes folks, different, the Weather Service offices are not necessarily in charge of these, and they have to, take stuff from other sources, so, okay, as of now, it's a tsunami advisory for parts of Guam, but not even all of Guam. Let me go ahead and put up that map here from the Weather Service in Guam. We're going to put that up on our other source. So this is from the Weather Service there in Guam. And a tsunami advisory. That means maybe a smaller impact tsunami, but not necessarily, devastating. I mean, locally, localized area could still be life-threatening, sure. But this is an update here that, so they're at about 11 o'clock there. So in a few hours, they may have a situation where hazardous sea level fluctuations and strong ocean currents may impact parts of Guam there, but it's something where it won't be as significant, but person in the ocean should get out of the water, person near the ocean should move away from beaches and harbors. So, tsunami advisory for parts of Guam. Let me go ahead and let's see what else we have in terms of, and what else we have in terms of information here. Bear with me. This is a very fluid situation. As we're live on the air, getting the information the best we can. There's no local severe warnings right now in our 62 counties, by the way. That warning from Marion that we jumped on for, in addition to the tsunami situation in the Pacific Ocean, that has been canceled early, Marion County in north central Florida. But we're on the global threat here with this tsunami situation. Okay, we had the tsunami warning for parts of Alaska. I know we'll get to California here in a minute. This is, very fluid, though. Very, very fluid. I'm trying to get folks, upgraded, here in terms of, and updated as I'm reading upgraded here on the screen in front of me. This is very serious stuff, though. Okay, so this is the Weather Service getting up into Alaska here. This is a graphic they made. Dangerous coastal flooding and powerful currents. The tsunami threat is imminent. It's these areas here. We can see my mouse in the red here and getting up toward these spots here to St. Paul, St. George in Alaska. And then you have, if I'm mispronouncing these, I apologize, but Atka there, the Attu Island, just that general vicinity under a tsunami warning, the upgraded coastal threat there, move inland and to higher ground. So that's what's being urged there by the Weather Service office in Anchorage. So again, let's go ahead and move off of that, though. Of course, we're watching Hawaii. We're watching Hawaii and a tsunami warning there. They have a little bit more time to prepare because the earthquake was, pretty close to Alaska. It was off of Russia there. An 8.7, which is very, very significant. It was an 8 initially, and they upgraded it. Looking at some stuff to an 8.7, it doesn't sound like a big upgrade, but you learn, not necessarily meteorology classes, but just in earth science classes in college or whatever, high school, that's a huge difference in terms of impact, and, that could, really increase this threat based on, how close it was to the surface of the tsunami danger here as well. So, again, let me go ahead and keep looking here. Keep giving you guys the very latest on the situation here as the scenario does evolve. So we need to talk about the West Coast. Okay, this is, a big deal for them with a watch in place. So let's go from north to south then. We'll do it that way. And I think the statements should all be the same. So this may be a little bit, kind of unnecessary the way I'm doing it, but okay, so you see a tsunami watch for all these areas in this purple here. You really should try to get out of them. Let's go south of this. Same thing here, Oregon coast. You see, doesn't include Corvallis, where Oregon State University is, but right at the coast there, you see some of these communities being impacted potentially, like Newport, there, Oregon. And then as we get here further down, you see areas we're going to be getting in Northern California here, and then you see more of these areas in the purple, not where the red flag warning is, but where the tsunami watch is. You saw Rika there. And as we get down here towards San Francisco and Oakland, this is an issue for them. And then I know we get to Hawaii because the navigation's always weird on this. Not normally doing it live on the air, but you kind of get the idea. So LA there, obviously, don't want to gloss over them, but you see Santa Monica, the Santa Monica Pier. You see San Diego here under tsunami watch as well. So there's a lot of areas impacted by this. Let's click on the statement here. They sent this out from the Alaska Tsunami Warning Center. So they sent this out about 40 minutes ago or so for the tsunami watch. So, okay, let's check our times. Pacific time, Alaska time. We got to check that. We got to make this a little bit bigger here. Of course, Hawaii's under tsunami warning versus a watch that some of these areas are in. Let me go ahead and see what we have here. Just bear with me. Very fluid situation. Okay, there's 5:07 in Alaska right now. They're 4 hours behind us. So I wanted to get perspective on this when I'm showing this to you, because it might get a little confusing otherwise. Okay, so let me go ahead and see the statement here. Tsunami watches are an advance notice. Now, warning for Hawaii. There's a watch for some of these areas further east in Alaska. Some of Alaska is under a warning, but then the west coast of the U.S. is under a watch right now, but that could get upgraded, to a warning and or advisory. But he's talking about that. So it's 5-something there in Alaska now. This is saying on here that they have a few more hours for parts of Alaska here still for this danger if it's going to come into fruition, like Kodiak, Seward there. You kind of get the idea. And in Canada, so 10:05 Pacific, that's 1 a.m. Eastern. That's about 4 hours from now. This is chronological in times. You see Valdez there in Alaska. You see areas in Washington State. This is still, it's a good while away. That's almost 3 in the morning Eastern, so there's still some time to evaluate the potential threat. It's going to be around 1 o'clock in Hawaii, our time here, meaning that's about 4 hours, just about 5 to 6 hours away. The potential threat in Washington State for the northern fringes. You see parts of Oregon there. You see, as we get here, Fort Bragg, California. That'd be 11:50 Pacific, 2:50 Eastern, so that's still almost 6 hours away as you're looking there. But that doesn't mean you should, wait. You need to be getting those plans into play here for this potential threat. This is not a short-term thing. If it were to come to fruition, they could drop this early. We've seen this a lot before, but with an 8.7, there's a chance they may not drop it early. Whether it's a really big tsunami where the waves are just, astronomically high, this is a devastating event that we talk about for a long time, or whether it's just, it could be a few feet and that's still considered a tsunami, but it's not the same thing. We don't know what it's going to be yet. May not even get any waves, but it could be just devastating. It may not be much, if anything. So we don't know yet. That's why there's a watch, a warning. More likely, that it could be something more significant for Hawaii, but still not a guarantee as we're looking out there. But you see some of these areas, the potential tsunami there, Crescent City, California, 11:55 Pacific time. Monterey, California, 12:15 a.m. Pacific. San Fran there, 12:40, so that's 3:40 a.m. Eastern time. That's still 6 to 7 hours away. Santa Barbara here, you have 12:50 Pacific, that's 3:50 Eastern time. The Los Angeles Harbor there in California, 1:05 a.m. Pacific, so maybe 4 o'clock in the morning there our time. We're in the Eastern time zone in Florida where I'm doing this coverage, and that's still, doing the math, 7 hours away, a similar time frame for the Santa Monica Pier area, Newport, California, 1:10 a.m. Pacific, Bellingham, Washington, because there's different geography factors here. It would seem a little bit different with that. I'm almost confused on, it must just be the way the waves will be oriented and how far away from the coast these spots are. But then you see La Jolla, California, 1:15 a.m. Pacific time, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So that's the latest on the tsunami threat here. The tsunami watch remain in effect until further notice. So again, this is the information from the Weather Service. Potential arrival times for the possible, West Coast tsunami threat. So that's what we're looking at here right now. Just for perspective here, I know you see these times, that's like 3-something Pacific or 3-something Eastern where we're at, doesn't mean a lot for us, just so I can kind of, do the data. We're at 9:11 Eastern right now, as we're looking and as we're tracking things, and we're talking about 3-something in the morning here, our time, as we're looking at things and tracking things. So 12-something Pacific time out there. So that's, still several hours away. But we gotta be getting ready. Of course, if you're under a warning, that means to evacuate, though. And that's what we have, that threat is Hawaii right now, where you need to evacuate. You need to move to higher ground. You're under a warning there in Hawaii. Let's see, their time right now in Hawaii, they're at 3:12 p.m. in Hawaii. And the tsunami could arrive there. As I'm gathering the information, the first waves could arrive in about 4 hours in Hawaii. So 4 hours there to Hawaii, parts of Alaska. You know, they're a little closer. Let me go ahead and go to a different view here. Bear with me. I'm just going to go to a different view on time on Alaska. Take the temperatures off because that's going to get really cluttered otherwise. The radar doesn't go for those places, but at least you get an idea of the geography. At least on this map it doesn't, but the radar. But as I go ahead and see here the information. Okay, so gather more information here. I know one spot of Alaska, upgraded this warning here is, we had an advisory window warning for areas out there. One of these spots here already could have experienced it because this is a little after 5 o'clock Alaska time, so up to see what they might have experienced out there. Getting further over, you see a little bit later in the timeline. That's about 25 minutes away. That's why it's so important to move inland, to higher ground if you're located in these coastal zones. St. Paul, Alaska, you still got a little more time, it seems, but not, a whole bunch, but hour and a half or so. You don't wait to the last minute. Traffic jam's going to happen. If you're in a warning, you got to take action now. Advisory. Don't be in the water, but, follow local statements for that. But a warning means take action, move to higher ground, and move inland. That's really what you want to do. And that applies for not just those parts in Alaska there, but also parts of Hawaii. As I will go ahead and get back down toward the southern. Now, some of those Alaska areas aren't as populated as Hawaii, obviously. You have a lot of tourists there in Hawaii as well. This isn't an ideal situation. I mean, it never is. It's at least not happening at night. Folks, they're awake and they're able to kind of make their move here in Hawaii. As we're looking at this situation here, it's a very fluid situation for sure. We're just continuing to give you the latest here. Trying to keep you up to date. Again, dangerous scenario with the tsunami threat, obviously. Something you gotta take very seriously. Let me see that one area in Alaska, if we've gotten any information, if we had a tsunami there yet. If we've had any reports. I mean, it's not the exact angle that necessarily match up, but, it might not verify things one way or the other for other spots, but getting a lot of different earthquake reports in out there. I mean, just, off the earthquake dispatch there on Twitter. Yeah, there's concerns about, some folks here in meteorology, like Brad Panovich in Charlotte, North Carolina. He's a TV meteorologist. He's talking about how this is a mega thrust quake movement. It's a certain type of quake that's more associated here with tsunami danger, so that's not good. As the evaluations continue to be made here, this is not good. As I'm just looking through some stuff here, a very fluid situation, obviously. Again, just trying to get the latest. You take action there in Hawaii to protect yourself from this tsunami danger. Okay, I want to go ahead and switch this map so you see the warning here in Hawaii. You see these areas you need to take action and protect yourself, protect, property if you can for that. I mean, there's still a little more time, but not a lot. You need to go ahead and take those, evacuation plans and put them into action here right now in these areas in Hawaii. Getting more updates here. Let me see what we have. Okay, nothing to note. There, let me move to some of our California maps and we'll see the geography on the watch. Now there, let's go ahead and go to Los Angeles. Well, we'll go up to Sacramento first because, that's the state capital, and you see areas here. If we get a warning, these areas will have to be evacuated if you're in the purple. If you're able to. I mean, let's see, right after rush hour, right at the end of rush hour, and I just want to go and evacuate to beat the rush because we've had short-term, like in December, traffic jams happening before the watch got canceled, or warning got canceled, excuse me, as we're looking out there, and it was gridlock. If there would have really been a tsunami, probably wouldn't have been good, so maybe best to go ahead and try to evacuate if you're in an especially vulnerable area here and you need to move inland and higher ground. But that's it's not a warning, so you don't necessarily have to yet, but you see San Francisco here under this watch. I mean, especially for like a vacation, it'd just be best to go ahead and get inland here until this threat gets lifted, because if you're not familiar with the road and we get gridlock here, we actually were to have a destructive threat, this would be very bad news. You see Berkeley there, California, Berkeley, you see Oakland, you see all these areas here that could get hit by a tsunami potentially, as we have this watch in place. San Mateo, Redwood City, Fremont. Let's go ahead and move the map down some here. I gotta switch. It'll update these. Some of these that didn't, based on the geography and topography, these don't go as far inland with the dangers. Mountains maybe, depending on where you're at. You see Santa Cruz, Watsonville. You see Seaside, and then we'll get further down here. You see San Luis Obispo, Santa Barbara, Oxnard. Let's get down further on the map here. Obviously, you see some areas here around Los Angeles. So you have Malibu. Some of these areas, it didn't go as far in here because of the geography. Like around San Fran, it's sometimes based on, there's maybe stuff to kind of stop it down here, not as much around San Fran. But you see around Malibu Beach here, Santa Monica, you need to be ready to evacuate. You see El Segundo here. If I may be mispronouncing that, El Segundo, maybe better pronunciation. Manhattan Beach, Torrance. It gets a little bit further inland down here. You can see right there. This is the Interstate 110 corridor here. You see, as we look around, Long Beach, Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach here. You see Dana Point, San Clemente, Oceanside, Carlsbad, California. You see Llano Beach there. I mean, this includes a lot of the Interstate 5 corridor as we get all the way down to San Diego, Chula Vista. There's a tsunami watch here in play right now as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So again, a very dangerous situation, obviously, even more so than that there's a warning for not just parts of Alaska, where it could have already had some of that threat start to come into play, but for Hawaii, a lot of Hawaii under a tsunami warning. Could have a tsunami about 4 hours there in Hawaii. Not a guarantee, but this is the type of earthquake that could be a real problem here meteorologically, and just based on the overall topography here. As we get back over to parts of Hawaii, we're going to see that warning pop back up. It took a second to pop up. I was hoping for some good news that maybe something was getting, dropped. Maybe something was working in our favor, but that is not the case at all here whatsoever. System just has a lot, in it right now with alerts. It's still there, the tsunami warning for Hawaii. This is, very serious stuff, obviously. Very serious stuff. Need to be, taking, precautions here folks in Hawaii are moving to higher ground, cell phones going off, roads are jammed. That's why you need to go ahead and do it here, as quick as you can, because you don't want to be waiting around. You don't want to be waiting around. This is very serious. You can't, if you're under a warning, the time to take, even if you have 4 hours, you need, theoretically, because that's when the wave would arrive, the waves, the sequence, would arrive. You need to go ahead and move to higher ground now, because the roads are going to be getting, as they already are based on reports, gridlock. You need to take action to protect life and property here in parts of Hawaii. Again, this is a very serious situation. Again, you need to take this very seriously. You need to be, really paying attention here. I know some folks haven't taken action yet in Hawaii based on some media reports. Some of them are still at the beach. You don't want to be doing that. I mean, the thing about, if you're under a watch, it's one thing, an advisory, you don't want to be near the water, really. But if you're under a watch, you still have a little more time, a warning. You need to go ahead and get away from the water, because, the roads are going to be gridlocked. I mean, again, this is very serious stuff. And I know we don't have, I can't just pull it up, because this is not something we deal with as much here in Florida, obviously, but just reading different tweets here, and I'll try to give, if I get a stat like this, I'm going to give credit, obviously. But chief meteorologist at Fox 13 in Tampa, Paul Delgado, on Twitter, saying that this earthquake that we had up toward Russia will be one of the top 10 earthquakes ever recorded in the history of the world here. So, in recorded history. So that is not good, obviously, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So that's the synopsis of his tweet. I mean, he didn't use quite that type of wording. He said, tonight's earthquake off of Russia, magnitude 8.7, will put it in the top 10 largest magnitudes ever recorded. But just trying, we don't have a listing that I can just go to like that here. So I just have to, do some of that on the fly here. Give credit here, obviously, when we're reporting information like that, just to tell you how big of a deal this situation is. So let's go ahead and see the earthquake again here where that happened. I'm going to switch to the USGS site here again. Oh, wrong graphic. Let's try that again. As we go ahead, USGS, you can see here. Oh, this is where the earthquake was, off of Russia. And there's Alaska. There's the west coast of the U.S. There is Hawaii. As we're looking at things down there, they had an earthquake down there, but not nothing like this. 8.7. Yeah, magnitude 8.7 quake here. As we're looking, as we're tracking things, I know other parts of the Pacific, they've been watching things in Japan and Australia here as well, for sure. As we go ahead and move away from that for a moment. Again, there's Hawaii. Let me go back to the other map, because I'm going to show you, so the waves are becoming kind of like this, I would say. I know there may still be, they used to put out a map that kind of showed the wave progressing. I don't know if they still do that. I think I saw that last year, actually, when we had the tsunami potential for the west coast of the U.S. But again, it kind of shows you the idea of the wave pattern potential. But again, continuing to track things here, very serious. There's where may have been generated at the tsunami. There's the west coast of the U.S. See Mexico there as well. You see Canada, you see Alaska, and Hawaii. I mean, in a way, if you kind of think about it, and why they got ahead and issued the warning probably is it looks like it's pinpointed if you think about it. The propagation here of the danger kind of pinpointed, and pointed toward Hawaii in a way. So doesn't mean that's going to be exactly how it plays out, because it's not something we're used to talking about, but that's just kind of what it looks like to me. I feel like, I've prepared for this for a while, thinking about what we'd have to do in a situation like this, even if we had the very bizarre situation, if we had anything like this in our area, which is not, this does not impact, the, east coast of the U.S. or the Gulf Coast. But we need to talk about this. It's like you're almost a fish out of water here, pardon the analogy, but just, trying to talk about stuff, I feel like, this is how people are in other parts of the country talking about hurricanes that we deal with. because it's not something that I'm trying my best here. I think I'm giving you the best information, but there's always that chance, something I'm seeing is just a little bit off of what the locals, when they have to deal with this over the years of watches and the like, kind of understand from their meteorologists locally out there. As we go ahead and continue to give you the updates here, the current time right now, in Eastern time is 9:28 p.m. Out there, though, in Hawaii, 3:28 p.m. The first tsunami waves could arrive in less than 4 hours. Okay? So, let's see here. 7:17. So, that's Hawaii time. So, just under 4 hours, the first waves could arrive in Hawaii. You need to evacuate. You need to take action to protect yourself, immediately there. See if we got any updates from the California situation. See if we're going to upgrade down or Washington State to a warning. That'd be a real big deal, obviously, if that happened. Not a good thing. As we continue to give you guys the very latest here. Very significant earthquake in Russia there. As we give you guys the latest. Again, trying to get the information here. There are unconfirmed reports that there has been a tsunami out in the basin out there for some other countries. So that's obviously not a good sign. Again, just trying to get through everything. Again, just looking through some of the information here. Okay, so 7:17 p.m. for Hawaii there. So that's a little less than 4 hours. We do the time conversions. We're at 9:30 here, about a little before 1:30 our time. So they have a little less than 4 hours. But remember, can't wait around. Traffic jams can happen. Some folks may be off the grid and not have their phone on hand. And they need to take, this very seriously. We just got an update. So let me see what this is all about here. See what this is saying. A lot going on, obviously. I'm just reading some stuff here on the fly. I want to make sure, there's so much here, I want to make sure I'm not giving you guys the wrong information. That's why it's taking me a second. Because some of this stuff comes from different places. Okay, what it looks like to me, I'll go ahead and pull the map up. This is very fluid, so bear with me. It looks like, based on the information here, not good news for everybody, but good news for the west coast of the U.S. here in some ways, not completely. But what it looks like here, and this can always change because it's a fluid situation. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the map on the other source now. So that tsunami watch has been switched over not to a warning, which is obviously good news, but there is still something there. It's a tsunami advisory, meaning a lower end, tsunami could impact these areas along the west coast. I know this is kind of a broad map, but that's what the orange is for. There's still a warning for Hawaii. You really still got to take this very seriously. But for California, for Oregon, Washington, this is an advisory, meaning it would be smart, meaning it's more just advisable to treat this, as something that's, still serious. You don't want to be in the water, obviously. You don't want to be in the water there, but it seems that this isn't going to be something that's just disruptive for a wide range. But you don't want to be right at the beach either, I would say, because things can still fluctuate enough where it can still catch folks off guard, and still could be deadly in that manner, of course. But that's, an advisory versus a warning. It's not that you have to just, flee tens of, miles. So that's some good news. But still got to take it seriously. Tsunami advisory now. Not a warning, not a watch. Watch, lower level, the warning's worst case scenario, like what right now anyway, Hawaii and part of Alaska are under. An advisory is something that says there could be a water rise. And, those at the water need to take precautions. Don't be at the water, but this is not something that's, just a life-altering situation if you just get a little away from the water. That's for the West Coast. That's as of now, things can still change. They don't generally, and you still got to be paying attention, obviously. Again, let me go ahead and keep reading over this information here. Because this is very fluid. Okay, so let me go ahead and go to that statement then. We're going to go to that statement on the screen. This is something that's, a big deal for Hawaii. You got to still evacuate. Okay, this is still a really big deal. There's no warning. This has a potential. We don't know yet, but there's a potential it could be a very serious situation that really is destructive for California, for Oregon, for Washington. It's still something that, marine interests have really got to be looking out for, but this is not something that may be as big of a deal, in terms of areas away from the coast, immediate coast. So here's a statement that come in about California, about Oregon, Washington, parts of Alaska, I think in here, maybe two, but if nothing else, California, Oregon, Washington, let's see here. So they're talking about, you see those areas. I know parts of Alaska, it looked like on the one map they weren't underneath it anymore. Based on the geography, that may be the case. But so what they're saying here now, this is not something that's just going to go right across San Fran and cause devastation anymore, is what we're thinking. But that's why it's an advisory, not a warning. But if you're located in the coastal area, move off the beach and out of harbors and marinas here. Tsunami advisories mean that a tsunami capable of producing strong currents or waves dangerous to persons in or very near the water is expected or already occurring. So, that's what this is about here, toward those coastal areas. It's something that's about being near the water, where the danger lies here. An advisory, not a warning there. But if you're in a coast area, move off the beach and out of the harbors and marinas there. California, Oregon, and Washington. Tsunami capable of producing strong currents or waves dangerous to persons in or very near the water is expected or is already occurring areas, and the advisory should not expect widespread inundation. Tsunamis are a series of waves dangerous many hours after the initial arrival time, and the first wave may not be the largest. So, a tsunami could still happen. That's what this means. Tsunami could still happen for the West Coast, but it's not expected to cause widespread inundation, meaning you think about storm surge here like in Florida, we could have, some water rise here at the coast, and it could happen pretty quick. And, if you're not being, careful, I know it's going to be getting, as we're looking at the time, they're 6:30, so dark before this happens, too. You might not be able to see it if you're not paying attention, if you're like walking around the beach at night or something, but not expect, and let me highlight that part, obviously, not expect widespread inundation out there, includes parts of Canada as well, but we could have a situation here as we're tracking that's capable there, and I'm going to go ahead and highlight all of this. Tsunami advisories mean that a tsunami capable of producing strong currents or waves dangerous to people, persons entering near the water is expected already occurring. So yes, it's something that could be of marine interest, could be a tsunami, but it's not expected to be one of these we talk about for at least the west coast of the U.S. for, generations or something like that. That's good news. That's very good news, but this could still be deadly if you don't want to be walking around the beach. Don't be on the beach here for the next several hours along the west coast is what this says. As we're looking at the potential times of arrival here. Updated information. 12:40 a.m. Pacific there for San Fran. So that's what the advisory means here. Tsunami advisories mean that a tsunami capable of producing strong currents or waves dangerous to people, could happen very near the water. So don't be on the beach as we're looking ahead in the timeline. These are, again, the potential arrival times. Now as we're looking out to parts of Hawaii, you still see that pink. That's a warning here. It's a different story there. You got to take those preparations very seriously there, obviously, in Hawaii until further notice. As we keep on reading information. Just bear with me. I know it's important, folks, looking at water levels here, obviously. Okay, so let's go ahead and kind of say what this means. A second here. Bear with me. So things have changed since they sent this out. So it's advisory, not a warning, not a watch anymore, but the graphic is very important because it kind of breaks down. So a warning, that's what we have in Hawaii. Dangerous coastal flooding and powerful currents possible. Move to higher ground or inland. The watch is what we had there for, some areas. Hawaii got upgraded to a warning. For California, Western Oregon, even though they did have to watch this, it's got been out. They've been changed to an advisory, meaning strong currents and waves dangerous to those in or very near the water possible. Stay out of the water, away from beaches and waterways. So that's kind of just a breakdown, the difference there. Very important information, obviously, for the NWS there in Los Angeles, as they're now under an advisory updated since this tweet got sent out. But as we go ahead and I give you guys the very latest here on the situation. Getting new updates in here, obviously. Again, just trying to give you the latest. Okay, I know we're talking about an 8.7 earthquake there. Well, actually, we just got another update that the earthquake was actually not an 8, not an 8.7, but it was actually an 8.8. So that means it's something that was even a little bit worse here in terms of meteorological slash, just science history here. So, again, let me go ahead and pull up our other source from the USGS. They're saying now that blue dot, that was an 8.8 earthquake. So it's an advisory here. Still could be an issue, but not catastrophic. Still could be, catastrophic toward parts of Hawaii, but, it's not certain yet. But there's a warning, so you got to take action and move to higher ground in Hawaii there. They're out there in the Central Pacific Ocean. Still a little less than 4 hours away from them getting hit potentially by the tsunami scenario. I know, speaking of just the basin, there's actually tropical cyclone activity to the south of Hawaii. We'll put this up. See Tropical Storm Kelly to the north and Hurricane Iona to the south, and tsunami be coming in from the north here. This is, part of Alaska, and then the satellite kind of cuts off here, but further up is where we would have had that generated, and there seems to have been some issues in other countries here, based on some preliminary social media reports, but don't really have a lot more than that right now. It was off of Russia, though, the earthquake, and that's obviously a very bad earthquake to have. Might have had an immediate, type of situation with a tsunami generation there near Russia. Again, we're still with you here right now. Just bear with me. See the Hawaii map here. Again, in general, for California, Washington, and Oregon, it's just about staying out of the water and evacuating the immediate, beach line there, immediate beach area. But for Hawaii, it's a much different story based on the potential that these waves potentially propagating on in there a little bit, which is not good. Just bear with me here. Just trying to read over the information. I'm just trying to go through some of this. So again, really need to be careful in Hawaii here, obviously, in terms of taking those evacuation plans and putting them into action here. If you're in these, pinkish areas, move to higher ground. If for some reason evacuation, if you're already pretty far in, it's not practical, Because some of these areas are mountain ranges and the like, then you just want to be on high ground here. But you see parts of Hawaii here, with that danger, Honolulu County, obviously. Get further down here, Maui, Hawaii County, Big Island. So again, I think what we're going to do right now, because the threat is not supposed to hit until that 1 a.m. hour, there's not a lot, the traffic jams are building there, obviously. There's not a lot that we can just reiterate at this point. And I know the West Coast under advisory. We have parts of Alaska still under a warning. Let me double check just to make sure that's still the case here. But, those areas that in general have a lot less population and more experience in dealing with this than Hawaii. We still have a warning there for parts of Alaska. So let me go ahead and pull this back up. Bear with me. Okay, so we have a warning here. Bear with, in some of these areas, the waves wouldn't be as bad. That's what that's telling you. But you see here the Hawaii red is a warning. Parts of Alaska warning. This is an advisory. The white's got dropped for parts of Alaska there, and looks like maybe in the parts of Canada, but then an advisory further down. So this is what the real concern is. The warning where the evacuations have to take place over a really wide-ranging geographic area versus here. I mean, it is a wide-ranging geographic area, but it's just the immediate coastline. You need to evacuate from the immediate beach, really, is what we're talking about here, and you can do that pretty adequately in a short period of time. So that's not as big of a deal. Maybe damage to maybe like lifeguard stands would be possible on the beach there. But that's what we're talking about versus here. Could be a much different story here. We've already had the potential in some of the other areas here in the basin, trying to come into play outside of the U.S. as well. So that's what we're tracking right now. I think we're going to wrap it for the time being because there's not a lot we can add here. But what we'll do here, if the warning stays in play for Hawaii, as the threat starts to come in, we'll be back before, the threat starts to materialize here. That's where the focus is. We had this warning, situation for them. I know they had concern on the West Coast in 2011 with that Japan earthquake that was so terrible, and the tsunami for those areas. It wasn't as bad for Hawaii and the West Coast, but still had some impacts. So it's a different area here, and the impacts of the tsunami could be different, the earthquake and the like. So 7:17 Hawaii time, that would be, let me double check here. So let me do my time conversion because I want to make sure I'm doing this right. We're 3:51 Hawaii time right now. So a little over 3 hours away. So that's 1:17 a.m. Eastern time. So we'll be back here, let's say, if the warning continues to hold, if it gets turned to an advisory, we'll just probably go to our normal standard update here tonight and go into that cycle. But if the warning holds here for these areas in Hawaii, we will jump back on here by 12:30 a.m. Eastern. That is going to be, let's do the time conversion there, 6:30 Hawaii time. So we'll jump back on by 12:30. If this warning continues to hold that long, that's the plan. If something else breaks, that's really imminent, we'll pop in and or send it out. But if this warning holds all the way to 12:30, which means that tsunami could be less than an hour away at that point, it's a little over 3 hours away now. If we have that threat continuing that long and it becomes, even more real, for areas there, especially the more populated areas, then we'll be on with coverage again by 12:30 a.m. Eastern, 9:30 Pacific, 6:30 Hawaii time here. If we switch to an advisory for everybody, we don't have any tsunami warnings for Hawaii or the West Coast, obviously, which we don't right now, and it's an advisory expected to stay that way. We will just be in a situation here. If we don't have warnings as this is coming into Hawaii, we'll just do a normal update here late, Tuesday, early Wednesday, even past 12:30, in the time frame, we'll have that formal update. But if we have the warning still holding about 12:30 or so, which will be less than an hour from the strike, we'll go into special tsunami coverage here, and we'll be giving you the latest from that point on. So until that threat, kind of resolved itself. So that's kind of the storyline there. Tsunami warning for parts of Hawaii. You need to take this very seriously here. Again, by 12:30, may jump on it earlier. We'll see, but that's kind of the ramp up. In terms of letting folks know about this danger. There's just so much, not much more we can say right now, but you need to evacuate if you're in these pink areas. Move to higher ground in Hawaii. That's where we have that danger in place. So take this very seriously. Parts of Alaska, they're more used to it, unfortunately, but they have that concern as well up there. Real quick, let me go ahead and jump in. Some of these areas may have already seen the impact. They're pretty sparsely populated. I'm just going to get a view up here, though, and it may take a second to load some of what I need. I'm not used to pulling it up from this. It may not even load the alerts. We'll find out. Let me see here. Some of these areas have the concern, though, obviously, out there in Alaska, but I don't think it's loading the alerts. It may just be taking a second, but again, we have a tsunami warning for parts of Hawaii. Very serious situation, obviously. So we're going to keep watching this. We're going to keep tracking this here. We'll give you guys the latest here as conditions warrant, but otherwise we'll be back with live coverage at 12:30 if the warning gets dropped, and we will just go into a formal update here later on in the night. So, it's not too far past that, but a little bit. But again, tsunami is supposed to hit potentially around 1 something Eastern, which is 7 something or so out that way. They're 6 hours behind us right now. So again, it's a very serious situation, obviously, out there. Very serious situation for these folks. As needed, I'll send out stuff on Twitter, especially at Cloud Casey, if things, escalate and or if we get some cancellation or to advisory. We hope that happens, but we're going to take action in these zones here in Hawaii. This is a potentially dangerous situation. They're out in the ocean, the islands, unlike the West Coast. So obviously, this could be very serious. We'll be back here, continuing to watch. Again, at least by 12:30 Eastern, which is 6:30 Hawaii time, 9:30 Pacific time, but may have to jump in sooner. So keep it tuned here to Cloud Weather. We'll keep you guys up to date on our tsunami.gov, I believe it is. Let me just make sure I'm saying this right. They have updates on all this here as well from the U.S. tsunami warning system. So very important to get that information, obviously. Let me see if we got any new updates here. I just want to make sure before we go off that we don't have anything new here. Tsunami.gov will give you the updates. Sometimes it can be a little bit, confusing maybe. There's a lot, on there. But again, serious situation. Just make sure, you're paying attention out there and why you got to take action to protect yourself. So tsunami warning out there in Hawaii. Take action to protect, yourself, talking about your life, your family members' lives, and property. If possible, in the property part now. Okay, so wait a minute. Okay, that's a new update. 3:51 Hawaii time. This is a supplement, tsunami warning supplement. I know this stuff can be, I've dealt with it some, so, but for a lot of folks, this is even more confusing because I know when you first look at this stuff, it gets confusing at first, but then the more you look at it, you kind of understand it. I know it can be confusing, so I've tried to learn all this over here in case we have a situation like this evolve. So let me go ahead and say this statement here. This is going to be from the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. They issue it for there versus it's out of Alaska for the West Coast. But they're still keeping the tsunami warning. This is an hourly update. They just sent out in the last 10 minutes. The tsunami warning continues for the state of Hawaii, 8.7. I think it's an 8.8 now, though. There have been some reports of a tsunami on a couple of the gauges though now. 1 to 3 feet. So that was something that's not overwhelming, but that, 3 feet is still something that you gotta be taken seriously. So I know that doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 feet here can actually be something that is pretty significant. It's nothing like, what we've had in some of the horrible tsunamis over the years, but we're still not sure how high this could be there. Maybe, that's what it is there, but I want to check something else real quick. They still got the tsunami warning. They're still keeping this at least for another hour unless something changes. They're keeping this, and the threat's supposed to, maximize at 7:17 Hawaii time, which is about 1:15 a.m. Eastern time or so. So let me check something because there's some different forecasts out there for the height on the tsunami. Some of this stuff is probably changing here in real time. Sometimes it doesn't sound like a lot, but let me click on some stuff here. Bear with me. Doing this behind the scenes. Okay, so the warning, basically they're saying 1 to 3 meters. It doesn't sound like a lot at all for Hawaii. That's what they're going with right now. But, that makes you think, oh, that's not that big of a deal. Well, the thing about that is, though, is I'm looking at more stuff behind the scenes. I'm just verifying, making sure I'm not missing something. I'm looking at the Honolulu County Island, per se. Okay, let's see what we got here. I see the stuff went away, but I don't think they dropped it. I'm still checking because very fluid here. Yeah, because 3 meters is almost 10 feet. A 10-foot wave going in would be a problem. So there's still a threat for that as the latest information for Hawaii. Yeah, the warning's still in effect. Our system, I think when they sent the statement out, it took it off, but they still got the warning there. Don't let that fool you here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go to another mode real quick. Take the tropics off. But yeah, don't let that fool you here. They still have the warning, could have a tsunami up to 10 feet, then pretty much. Not, something even astronomically higher, but 10 feet, that's like, in a way, not exact comparison maybe, but, that could be kind of like 10 feet of storm surge. That's the problem, obviously. Maybe not as far inland, but the way these waves could be, you got to take, if you're in the morning, you got to go to higher ground, you got to evacuate because, sometimes this stuff can be kind of unpredictable. Some ways, not always, but we have a advisory. I know, I'm going to double check this here real quick, but I want to make sure I'm getting this right. But like for the west coast of the U.S., a lot of these areas here, I want to make sure, I believe, because they got some numbers on here. I'm just reading over this. Okay, is this a new update? Okay. So yeah, for the west coast, it's an advisory, not a warning, because of what I'm about to show you. Okay, so this is part of Alaska now. You know, they've had more concern in their life, but let's show you Washington State. So less than a foot in most areas. That's why it's an advisory, not a warning. Now, Oregon could be some spots around Port Orford there, maybe 2 feet. California, now Crescent City, even though it's not a warning, that's still concerning there. I'm a little surprised that it's even set up like that. It says it could be up to 6 feet there, but there may be something to do with the topography about the area. I'm not 100% sure, but most of the areas are less than a feet. Or maybe like around Port San Luis there, San Luis, 3 feet. Okay, some areas less than a feet though, like La Jolla, Oceanside, Newport Beach, Los Angeles Harbor. So that's kind of the storyline there, but it could be up to 10 feet in parts of Hawaii. That's what we're looking at right now. Over the next few hours at about 1:15 a.m. Eastern, 7:15 p.m. Hawaii time is when the onset could be there of the danger. But go ahead and continue to evacuate there, obviously. Again, so we're going to wrap it for now. I know there's just so much going on here. It's such a fluid situation. As there's a lot, coming on in. I know we have some strong storms locally, but we had that warning go away pretty quick. Let us focus on the tsunami situation out there in the Pacific Basin from the 8.8 earthquake. So, up there near Russia. So we're just trying to give you guys the latest here. We'll be back as warranted, but otherwise, if the warning continues approaching within an hour of the impact for Hawaii, we'll be back around 12:30 Eastern, which is 6:30 Hawaii time. If they drop the warning, it turns this to an advisory. We'll be posting stuff on social, but just have our full update here later tonight. So we'll keep you advised here. Keep in alert mode right now with this tsunami threat for Hawaii. If you're in Hawaii on that tsunami warning, you need to evacuate / move to higher ground here. Take this situation seriously. We'll be back here more through the evening. Keep it tuned to cloud weather, but please, if you're in Hawaii, take this situation. Or if you're in the areas in Alaska, we've had the tsunami warning. Take this very seriously and be still very vigilant there on the advisory, along the western U.S. coast there.